In this series, I'm documenting my journey creating a real-world Quasar app, Fudgit 2, from scratch, an app that will be ultimately deployed to iOS, Android, Mac and Windows. Make sure you click subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss any of the videos in this series, and you can find the link to the whole playlist down in the description. So this week I sent my sketch design to Pete, the amazing designer that designed the original Fudgit icon, this pretty little thing here. And he was kind enough to give me some great feedback which I've integrated into the design, such as reducing my color palette down to just a few different colors, making my positive and negative colors a bit more vibrant, reducing my font weights down to just 2, because previously I had bold, regular and light fonts in the app, and now I just have bold and regular fonts everywhere. And he also recommended adding consistent border radius, so I had different amounts of border radius on different rounded squares within the app, and now they all have exactly 10 pixels of border radius. And inspired by his feedback, I also reduced the number of fonts in the app to just 3 different sizes, 12, 16 and 21, because previously I had about 20 different font sizes in the app, and I thought if I reduce this right down it might improve the design. And I discovered this article on Lifehacker which tells you to stick to these font sizes in your designs, and within this list of sizes is 12, 16 and 21. So I've just made absolutely everything in the app one of those 3 sizes. And although these changes are quite subtle, it's actually massively improved the look and feel of the app and made it feel a lot cleaner and nicer. And as far as building the app, although I haven't actually started building the app yet, I have done 3 important things in little apps that I've created. So number 1 is I've figured out how I'm going to handle theme switching in my app, because Fudgit Plus subscribers will have a bunch of different themes that they can choose from. So you can see I have 5 different themes in this drop down here, and when we choose a different one, you can see all the colors of our app change. And even the colors that are in Quasar components, such as this Q input here. So you can see the label is our primary color, and this line at the bottom is our primary color as well. And the second thing I've done is figure out how I can give the user an option for different text sizes within the app. So we have this drop down here of text sizes. And if I choose one of these, we can see the entire app updates. So we see the text size increase in the header and in all of our components and the footer as well. And we even see it increase in our Quasar components, because this option for different text sizes was a very commonly requested accessibility feature. And the third thing I've done in a separate project is figure out how to use internationalization, because I want Fudgit 2 to work in multiple languages. So I just created a simple internationalization demo, and we can see all of the text is in English right now in the header, and this text and these buttons and the label for this drop down as well. But if we click on that and choose German, then we can see all of the text change to German. So I'm going to explain what I've learned this week and show you around some of these features and how I set them up. So the first thing I've learned this week is that it's sometimes a really good idea to create separate little apps to solve particular problems in isolation before you start working on your main app, or before you add those features to your app if you've already started creating it. And the reason I wanted to solve these 3 particular problems before I started creating the app is because the entire app will be affected by these 3 features. So every single little bit of text in the app, every single component in the app will be affected every time the user changes the theme, or changes the text size, or changes the language. So I wanted to figure out how these things would work and create these little proof of concepts before I started the app. And I'm glad I did now, because it's obvious to me now that this is going to save me an enormous amount of time. And I've also learned that I need to use Sass with SCSS syntax for the CSS preprocessor instead of Sass with indented syntax, which I usually use. And the reason for that is that I'm using these maps to store all of my themes and theme colors. And although you can use maps in Sass with indented syntax, you can't type out your maps on multiple lines like this. You have to have your maps on a single line. And if I just select this themes map and put it all onto one line, it looks like this, and you can see this is completely unmanageable. So that's why I'm going to have to use Sass with SCSS syntax when I start creating the app. So I'll try to explain how this theme switcher works. And if you look at the body tag here in the inspector, I have this data-theme attribute on the body, which is currently set to orange because we're currently using the orange theme. And if we choose a different theme, such as blue, then we can see that data theme attribute change to blue, and we can see our entire theme change and all of the colors in our app change. So I did have to use some vanilla JavaScript to add this attribute to the body tag, because in vue.js we can't bind to the body tag because it's outside of our root view component, which in a Quasar app is this div with an ID of QApp. So if I just jump to my main layout.vue file, so I have this watcher here, which is watching the value of this theme dropdown, and whenever the value changes, we fire some vanilla JavaScript to set this data theme attribute on the body tag. And you might be wondering why I'm adding this to the body tag and not to the QLayout component, for example. And you might also be wondering why I'm using a data attribute and not just a class. Well, the reason that I'm adding it to the body tag is that I was initially adding a class to the QLayout component in the usual Vue.js way, just by binding to the class attribute on the QLayout component. And this was all working great on most components whenever I changed themes. However, it wasn't working on components that pop up, such as this menu that pops up when we click on the select box. So I would switch to the blue theme, and this blue highlight color you can see in the background here would still be orange. And it took me about 2 hours to figure out why. And if I just right click on this element that's popped up, and we look at this in the inspector here, it's this QMenu component here, and Quasar is actually adding this as a direct child of the body and not as a child of the QLayout component. So that's why I needed to add these things to the body tag to make this all work. And the reason I'm using a data attribute instead of using a class is because Quasar already adds loads of different classes to the body tag, and so I didn't want to risk interfering with Quasar's default body class system. So if I jump to this themes.scss file, which is just an SCSS file that I'm importing into my main app.scss file here. So I have this map called themes, which contains an object for each theme. So we have an object for the orange theme, one for the orange light theme, one for the blue theme, etc. And each of these objects contains color codes for all of the different types of colors: primary, secondary, positive, negative, etc. And then if I scroll down past this map, I have this each loop here, which is looping through each of the themes and spitting out the data-theme attribute selector. So this is going to spit out data-theme equals orange, and then data-theme equals orange-light, etc. for each of the themes. And then within that selector, I have another each loop, which is looping through each of the colors in each of these objects. And this is spitting out background classes and text classes for each of these colors. So this is going to spit out a class such as bg-primary, and then the color that we've set in the theme. And then this is going to spit out text-primary, and then the color. And then it's going to spit out bg-secondary, and then the color, and then text-secondary and the color, etc. So this loop will spit out all of the classes that we need for each theme. And I'm also spitting out some overrides here for Quasar components as well, where I needed to override the default styles of Quasar components. When you're working in a Quasar project or a Vue project, it's very difficult to know exactly what's being spit out by complicated SCSS like this. So I actually used an online tool called SassMeister to figure all this stuff out. So if I just go to SassMeister, so we can add some SCSS here, or Sass if you want, and we can see the result here. So if I just copy all of this code and paste it in here, we can see the CSS that it's generating. So first we see all of the orange theme classes, then we see the orange light theme classes, etc. So I'm just going to do a really simple example here to show you how I got started figuring all this stuff out. So I'm just going to get rid of all this, and let's start with a really simple map. So I'm going to create a map called themes. For now, I'm just going to put orange, blue, and red in there. And now let's spit out a class for each of these themes that we could add to the body tag. So we can use an each loop to do this. So we can just add each, and then $theme in themes, and then parentheses. So this will loop through each item in our themes map with this $theme variable as the placeholder. So if we wanted to spit out a class for each of these, such as theme-orange, theme-blue, and theme-red, we could just do .theme-, and then to spit out this theme variable, we can just do hash, curly braces, and then $theme. Then we can just add our curly braces. For now, I'll just stick a comment in there which says styles go here. This is wrong actually, these should be curly braces and not parentheses here. So I'll just change these to curly braces. And so we can now see a class being spit out for each of these themes in this map. So let's add some colors for each of our themes to this map. So I'm just going to break this up onto multiple lines like this. And I'm just going to add a child object to each of these themes like this with parentheses. And inside that, let's add a primary property. I'll just set this to say orange, and then a comma. Then we'll add a secondary property and set that to, let's say, blue. Then I'm just going to copy these and paste them into the blue theme. But this time we'll set the primary to blue and the secondary to purple. And I'll do the same in the red theme. So we'll set the primary to red and the secondary to, let's say, yellow. So now what we can do here is add another each loop to loop through each of these colors. So primary and secondary. So what we can do here is at each, we need to provide a placeholder for both the property name and the value. So we could call this type and color. So we could do each type, comma, color in, let's say, colors. And we can use any names we want for these placeholder variables. And then we could add curly braces. And let's say we want to spit out a class for each of these colors, such as bg-primary and bg-secondary. Then we could just do something like .bg- and then to spit out this type variable, which will be equal to either primary or secondary. We can do hash, then curly braces, and then just do $type. Then we can add our curly braces and add our style property. So we want to set background to whatever this color is here. And that's going to be in this color placeholder. So I'll just put $color here. We should see this update now. No, we have an error here. Primary orange, secondary blue isn't a valid CSS value. Oh, I think that's because I've put these in quotes here, color values. So I'll get rid of all these quotes. And this should hopefully work now. No, still not working. Primary orange, secondary blue isn't a valid CSS value. And I see what the problem is here. I also need to add this $colors variable to this first each loop as well. So I'll add that here. And we can now see all of our classes and all of our background properties being spit out. So the theme orange, BG primary is set to orange, but the theme blue, BG primary is set to background blue, and the theme red, BG primary is set to background red. So from this point, it was fairly simple to build this up to what I've got here. Okay, so for the text size switcher, again, I'm adding a data attribute to the body tag, this data-text-size attribute, and I'm setting that to either XS, MD, LG, or XL. So right now it's set to MD, medium, which is the default size. So if I change the option here, we can see that data attribute change, and we see all of the text size for all of our components increase. So if I just jump to this text sizes.scss, which again is just a SCSS file that I'm importing into the main app.scss file. So this text sizes map is just a map of my default text sizes, 12 pixels, 16 pixels, and 21 pixels. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the text size within Fudgit is going to be one of these three sizes. And so I'm going to be using classes for each of these sizes, such as text-size-12, text-size-16, and the same for 21. And if I jump to index.vue, we can see some of these classes here, like text-size-16. And this one here is text-size-21. And I'll jump back to text sizes.scss. And I have another map here with all of the text size options, SM, MD, LG, and XL, along with multipliers for each text size. So MD is the default text size. So when the text size is set to medium, the multiplier will be 1. So when we spit out all of these text size classes down here, we're just going to be multiplying these default text sizes by 1, so they won't change. So when the text size is set to medium, all of the text in the app will be either 12 pixels, 16 pixels, or 21 pixels. But when we set it to large, then the multiplier will be 1.2. So these default sizes will be increased to around 14, and then 19, and then about 24. And so I have an each loop here, which is looping through each of these text size options and multipliers, and then it's setting up the body data attribute for each of those, such as data text size equals SM, and then equals MD, LG, XL. And then within that each loop, I have another each loop, which is looping through each of these default text sizes and spitting out those text size classes. So this will spit out text size -12, then text size -16, then text size -21. And then it's going to set the font size for that class and basically multiply the default text size by the multiplier, which is specified here. And I also have some override styles for Quasar components as well, because I had to also increase line height and stuff like that in some of the Quasar components to make this work on components such as the Q input and the Q select. But just so you can see what's going on here, I'm just going to copy all of this and paste it into SassMeister. And I'm just going to remove all of these Quasar overrides just to simplify this a bit. And I'll just remove this bit at the bottom where I'm spitting out some fixed text sizes for text that I don't ever want to change size. And we can now see it spitting out these text size classes for each of the different options. So we have the SM classes, the MD classes, and so on. So if we look at the MD classes, then the multiplier is 1. So a class of text-size-12 will just give a font size of 12, and the same for 16 and 21. But if the user sets the text size too large, then we're multiplying these default text sizes by 1.2, and so 12 becomes 14.4, 16 becomes 19.2, and 21 becomes 25.2. So now all I need to do to make sure that this works is make sure that every single component in my app which has text has one of these classes, and then all I need to do to change the text size for the whole app is just change this data attribute on the body tag. So it should now be really easy for me to create the app in a way where we can easily change the text size for every single element in the entire app. Okay, so I'll show you how this internationalization thing works. So when we change this drop down here, all of the language of our app changes to German. And this is actually unbelievably simple to set up. And in fact, it's so simple, I'm just going to create a new project to demonstrate this. So I'm going to open a new window in code and open up the terminal. And I'm just going to jump to my projects folder and run quasar create. And let's call it quasar-i18n. And I'll run that. And I'm going to leave the project name and I'll change the product name to Quasar i18n. And I'll leave the description and just put my name for the author. And I'll just choose Sass with indented auto import, and I'll disable ESLint. And the important thing here is to enable this vue i18n option. So I'll enable that and hit enter. I'll use npm to install the dependencies, and it's finished creating the project. So I'm going to drag it into VS Code, open up the terminal and just run quasar dev, and that's now running in the browser. So if we go to our source folder, and because we enabled i18n, we have this i18n folder, and if we jump in there, we have this enus folder for US English, and if we go in there, we have this index.js file. And we have some text fields here, one called failed, which is set to action failed, and one called success, which is set to action was successful. So before we add any other languages, let's just spit out these fields in our app. So I'm going to jump to pages and index.view, and I'll get rid of the image tag and get rid of these classes on the QPage component. And I'll just add a padding prop to add a little bit of padding. And so let's say we want to add a button, which uses one of these fields. We can do this really easily with the i18n helper. So let's just add a button to the page, q-btn, and we'll bind to the label prop. And to use the translation helper, we can just do $T, then parentheses, and then we can just pass in the name of the field we want to use in a string. So if we want to use this failed field, we can just pass in failed, and I'll save that. And we can see that text on this button, action failed. So I'll just duplicate this button and we'll stick the other field in here, which is called success. So I'll put that there, save that. And we can see that text in this button. And I'll also just set up a couple of paragraphs as well. So if we want to spit this out in a paragraph, we can just do double curly braces. And then again, $T, parentheses, and then the name of the field. And I'll do another one for the success field and save that. And we can see those paragraphs on the page. And if we wanted to use one of these fields in our view instance, say in our mounted hook, then we would just do this $T, then the name of the field, like that. So nice and simple. Okay, so now let's add another language to this app. So all we need to do is duplicate this enus folder and rename it to a different i18n locale code. So if you just Google i18n codes, then you should be able to find a list of all the different codes. So if we want to use French, then we can just use the code FR. So let's duplicate this enus folder And by the way, this option is being added by the duplicate action extension that you can get from the extension store. So we'll just rename this to FR. We'll jump in there. We just need to translate these strings here. So I'm just going to Google English to French. And I'll just paste this in, copy that, and paste it there. I'll do the same for this one. Copy that, paste that in here, and copy this, and paste it in here. And I'll just escape that apostrophe with a backslash and save that. And we also need to jump to this index.js file in the root of this i18n folder and import it. So we can just do import fr from /fr. And we need to add it here as well. So we can just set fr to fr like that and save that. And we should now have French available in our app. And we can easily use the i18n helper to switch our language. So I'll jump back to index.vue, and at the top of our queue page, I'm just going to add a queue separator and just add a bit of margin to that. So I'll add q-my-lg, save that. And I'll just stick a couple of buttons here, a couple of queue buttons, and I'll set the label on this one to English and duplicate that, and set the label on this one to French. And so I'll add a click handler to each of these. And so to set the language, we can just do $i18n.locale equals, and then the locale code. So this one is going to be en-us. Then I'll copy this click handler and paste it into the other button and change the code here to FR. And I'll save that, and hopefully we should be able to translate our app into French now. So I'll click on French, and you can see all of our buttons and our paragraphs are now in French. And if I click on English, we're back in English again. And you can easily use a QSelect instead for changing your language, like I've done here. And you could easily use something like local storage or local base to store the user's chosen language so that you can set the language when the app first starts. And Quasar also has a really handy method which you can use to detect the user's locale as well. So if I jump to the Quasar site and options and helpers and app internationalization and jump down to detecting locale, then we can fire this get locale method, which will return a string of the current user's locale code. So we can use this to actually automatically set the language for the user the first time they launch the app. Although you probably still want to give the user the option to change the language if they prefer to. And so for Fudgit, I'm just going to start off with a few different languages, the more popular ones. And initially I will just use Google Translate to translate all of these fields. And some of them probably won't be quite right, but probably what will happen is people who speak different languages will email me and say, this bit is wrong and that bit is wrong. And that way I can correct all of the fields over time. And if Fudgit 2 does well, then I may actually just pay to have the app professionally translated into all the different languages. So what I'm going to do next is actually start building the app using Quasar version 2, which unfortunately is still in beta. And I'll hopefully get started on the layout, get this playing nicely on both mobile and desktop, and get started on the front end for some of the pages. Check out the full playlist in the description, and please check out my Quasar courses at dannys.link/courses. And please hover over my face and click subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos in this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.